Well, I'm really enjoying, and youngsters are doing wonderful job, but I have certain fundamental reservations to some suggestions made. Oxygen solubility in water is negligible to poor. So aeration has no role. In earlier times when we had no medicines, all sick persons were given boiled water. Boiled water is zero DO. Number one, uh, the water holding true in a stored condition for millions of years when we talk about fossilized water. And that has been mentioned here. Regarding Rajasthan, one friend said about 200 years and all that. It is not because of CO2 or sunlight. It is because phosphate. Rajasthan soil has very practically zero phosphate, and phosphate being heavier particle, there is no phosphate particle in the atmosphere. So the rain that comes to the surface or the building top, it is no phosphate. So there are certain areas, but it's really, I'm overwhelmed to see, have so many inputs and all that. But we'll talk about that sometimes later. That water is dancing to the tune of molecules. Water has no reactivity on its own. Maybe when you pass some CO2, it becomes H2CO3, SO2, it becomes H2SO4, weak acid and all that. But the point is, water on its own does not react with anything. And regarding aeration and algal growth and all that for lake and all that, it is the movement of water that retards its organic engagement with contaminants. For example, if algae and aeration can purify water, why should there be any eutrophication? But once algae die, the immediate next step is eutrophication. And eutrophication is irreversible. If I'm allowed to share my own understanding of mythology, if it's not mythology in my understanding, Nilkant is Shankarji's throat is it's named Nilkant. Now Nilkant is what? It was Samudra Manthan, churning of the sea, which threw out poison, and Shankarji took it. There was no one else willing to take the poison. Now that poison is cyanotoxin. Cyanotoxins are Nilkant, green, blue. So is Shankarji's. And green, blue, cyanotoxin toxicity, anytime we take with reference to water and population health, I'll elaborate it. But cyanotoxin is directly, it impairs our neural system. MND and all that I once talked, Dr. Stephen Hawking suffered because of filthy Thames waters. Because cyanotoxins are eaten by prawns and oysters, those filtering mechanism animals, filter feeding. And once cyanotoxins are engaged in their tissue, all lobster and oyster eaters develop this condition. Later, the Dr. Dunlop from Australia, she's a very active endocrine neurologist. She worked, and all athletes had this kind of suffering, but more about it later, because this is an endless topic. But water is at the center. Let us understand water. We will have no other filthy Thames, and no civilization will ever pay the price that we paid by sacrificing Stephen Hawking's health. Thank you.